Let's talk about something really high stakes: pharmaceutical equipment qualification. You know, when regulators from the FDA, the EU, or the MHRA show up, they are ready to comb through every single detail of your validation data. And if you get it wrong, well, you're in for a world of trouble.
So let me ask you, is your qualification package really ready for that kind of intense scrutiny? Because believe me, when an inspector walks through that door, you have to be prepared for absolutely anything.
These inspectors are literally trained to find the gaps, the weak spots in your work. So today, we're going to get inside their heads. We're going to count down the top 5 traps that catch companies out time and time again. All right, coming in at number 5 is a huge one. It gets overlooked all the time in the rush to get new equipment online. I like to call it the OQ gap. Here's the thing. Your operational qualification, or OQ, isn't just about proving that a piece of equipment works perfectly under normal conditions. That's only half the story. The other, arguably more important half, is proving it fails safely. This means you have to intentionally challenge every single critical alarm and interlock. You need cold, hard proof that the safety systems are going to kick in exactly when they're supposed to. An inspector might walk up to your brand new vial filling machine and ask this exact question. See, it's not enough to show that the fill volume is spot on. You have to show, with objective evidence, that when something goes wrong, the machine's reject system works flawlessly every single time. And this is the bottom line. If you haven't deliberately tested the failure modes, then, as far as EU Annex 15 and the FDA are concerned, your qualification is fundamentally incomplete. Period. Okay, next up at number 4, oh boy. If there's one regulatory buzzword that has defined the last decade, it's gotta be data integrity. And your qualification reports are a prime hunting ground for these kinds of issues. What's really crucial to understand here is just how deep inspectors are willing to dig to verify your data. We are so far beyond just a signature and a date on a piece of paper. We're talking about the complete, unimpeachable trustworthiness of your data. From the second it's created to the moment it's archived, years down the line, it has to be absolutely airtight. You know, inspectors have gotten incredibly sophisticated with this. They cross-reference everything. They'll check the calibration certificate for your testing equipment against the exact date you ran your tests. They'll compare the timestamps in a digital audit trail to the handwritten entries in a manual logbook, looking for any discrepancy. They're basically forensic accountants, searching for any hint that data might have been backdated or messed with. And the logic they use is simple and it's brutal. If they can't trust the data, they can't trust the qualification. There's just no middle ground. The entire thing is invalid. At number 3, we have a really common shortcut companies try to take, especially with older legacy equipment. It's the tempting, but very dangerous, retrospective performance qualification trap. So imagine you've got this piece of equipment that's been running for years, and now you need to get it into a validated state. The big temptation is just to pull all the historical operational data to prove that it works, right? But here's the problem with that. Your day-to-day operational data, say from an old autoclave, it almost never has the right kind of evidence. It's not going to show that you tested the absolute hardest to sterilize load. It won't prove you pushed the system to the very edge of its parameters. It just doesn't meet the high bar required for a formal performance qualification. And you've been warned. Inspectors, especially from the UK's MHRA and across the EU, see this as a massive red flag. To them, it screams a lack of control and a serious risk to your product quality. Coming in hot at number 2 is maybe the most common finding I see over the long term. You have to remember, a qualification isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a living document, and the trap here is failing to manage change. Think about it. Your qualification is only valid right up until the moment you change something. Any modification, any little upgrade immediately puts that entire validated state at risk. The trap is making a change, and I mean any change, no matter how minor it seems, without a formal quality assessment. You have to document and prove that the change you made did not negatively impact the system's qualified performance. Here's a classic scenario. I see it all the time. Maintenance replaces a valve on a critical compressed air system. They see it as a simple like-for-like swap, so no change control form is ever filled out. Then 6 months later, an FDI inspector is walking the floor, spots the shiny new valve, and casually asks to see the impact assessment. And crickets. There isn't one. That's a major finding right there. And that brings us to the number one trap. This is the big one. It's the foundational issue that, so often, is the root cause of all the other problems we've just talked about. It's the ownership dilemma. You see, after all the protocols are executed and the final reports are signed, one absolutely crucial question remains. Who is actually responsible for keeping this piece of equipment in a state of control day in and day out? This is the question an inspector is going to ask. And if you don't have an immediate, clear, and confident answer, you've got a very serious problem on your hands. Because what they often find is this, the classic runaround. Engineering points the finger at quality, who then points to operations, who says, well, that's validation's job. The truth is, when everyone is responsible, nobody is responsible. And without a single, clearly defined system owner, those critical, ongoing tasks just fall right through the cracks. Nobody is tracking the revalidation schedule. Nobody is making sure the preventative maintenance plan is actually adequate. Nobody is watching for negative trends. And over time, the equipment just drifts out of its validated state. So, how do you ace your audit? How do you avoid these traps? It really comes down to this. 1. Challenge your critical alarms during OQ. 2. Make your data integrity absolutely bulletproof. 3. Formalize every single change, no matter how small, through your quality system. And 4, most importantly, assign a clear, accountable owner for every single critical system. So you really have to ask yourself, when that inspector comes to call, are they going to find a qualification that is a solid fortress, built on good science and crystal clear ownership, or are they going to find a fragile facade just waiting for them to poke it until it crumbles?